it will be available in our YouTube channel for you to be able to just review or rather revisit the presentation that will be presented today, whereby our speaker will be able to go through the whole aspect, or rather the whole explanation of what exactly is this Azure Application Gateway, and basically how you can be able to leverage this solution, or rather how you can understand the capabilities that are contained in this solution. So my name is Kelvin Gore. I am a technical consultant focused on Microsoft Cloud Solutions, and I'm the co-organizer for the Azure Kenya User Group, and I'll be moderating the session today. So basically, just to begin with some introduction in terms of what will be covered in the session today, is that we'll just go through the introduction which you have done. The agenda for today is basically getting started with Azure Application Gateway, and we'll have some closing remarks on that. So just a brief introduction in terms of what Azure Kenya User Group is and what exactly we normally do in the communities out here. So basically, Azure Kenya User Group is an Azure-focused community, tech community rather, that normally conduct some presentations and demonstration sessions just to discuss the technologies and the capabilities around different Azure solutions. So also in the audience, in case you feel like you are comfortable in terms of speaking about specific Azure solutions, you are very much welcome to also be part of the speaking side of it, just to share your knowledge and skills with the rest of the team around a specific Azure solution or Azure technology that you might be interested or of interest in. The other thing that we also cover is just to be able to discuss some aspect of the Azure trends, what is coming up around the Azure solutions or the Microsoft solutions, and also just some networking opportunities like the one we had in our previous session, whereby we had our physical Azure Kenya User Group meetup. It was actually a very first ever physical meetup session, and you'll be able to also just plan up another upcoming meetup session, and you'll be able to update you about that meetup session. So for you to stay updated also around these meetup sessions and the networking opportunity, some of the Azure trends, and even discussing the challenges that you are facing in Azure day-to-day interaction in the Azure technologies. We also have an existing WhatsApp community that we currently use also to just communicate and discuss about the different challenges or the solutions within the Azure environment, and also our YouTube channel whereby we upload this, same case as to our LinkedIn and also the Meetup channel. So our meetings are normally conducted on the second last Wednesday of the month. So every second last Wednesday, we'll always meet here just to be able to discuss and talk about these different technologies. Thank you, Sam. I see Sam has also shared a link on chat. So basically, for those of us here in this session here today, and you feel like after this engagement, you would also like to share something with us, there's the link that Samson has shared on chat. You can just click that link, submit your topic, as long as it's just around Azure and its related technologies and solutions. You can be able to submit your topic via that link, and you'll be able to arrange for you to be able to also be one of our speakers and share your knowledge with us in the session here today. With that being said, I say we got quite a number available in the session for us today. And in the interest of time, allow me to get started and hand over to our esteemed speaker for today to take us through the presentation and the goodies that he got prepared for us today. So with that, I'll just stop sharing this. Okay, that. All right, thank you. So with that, allow me to hand over to our speaker today and introduce our speaker today. So basically our speaker for the session today is known as Albert Sitati, who is also one of the experts, around Azure technologies, but I won't do much introduction. He'll just do the introduction part from his side as well. So over to you, Albert, for the session today.
Okay, thank you, Kelvin, and thank you everyone for joining. Just to ensure that you can all hear me. Kevin, can you confirm?
Yeah,
Yeah,
can hear
that is
you.
perfect. Sure,
Perfect.
let me quickly get the right screen up and then we'll jump direct into it for the interest of time.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, so as you spin up the screen, just to notify the attendances that the session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So just to be aware that it will be recorded. Thank you. You can proceed, Albert.
Okay, thank you once again. Thank you everyone for joining today's session, and also thank you, Kelvin, for that introduction. Quickly jumping into it, what do you think is the major headache that face individuals who are maybe managing or getting started with Azure Application Gateway? Anything that can come right into your mind? I see there are a number of the people who said they have interacted with the Application Gateway. Maybe if any one of you can just share what was the major challenge he or she experienced, or what do you think is the major headache or nightmare to most of the people when they start using Azure Application Gateway? Anyone, Charlene, on your side? I saw you had your hand up. Sam, anything that you can think of? Uh,
All
Go for
right.
it, Sam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on my side, yeah, I've used Application Gateway in a few instances, and one of the use cases was when we wanted to expose, or a client wants to expose an application that serves HTTPS web traffic, that is, and it's hosted on multiple backend servers. So how to expose that service to users from on one endpoint.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Basing on that challenge, so join me today in this session, and I believe by the end of the session we'll have gotten the answer to maybe or I'll walk through your challenge. And in this session, to help you tackle that challenge, and as well as to introduce the Azure Application Gateway to the audience, we'll have four major aspects that we'll go through this night, which will be an introduction. Then we'll jump into the core concepts of Azure Application Gateway. Then we'll have a short demo. And finally, we'll have a conclusion and also a Q&A question. However, if you are running through and then you have any question, also feel free to unmute and just ask your question. So just to add on what Kelvin said during the introduction aspect of things, my name is Albert Sitati. At the moment serving as a technical Azure consultant at BY. I'm a Microsoft Solutions Architect Expert certified. I'm also certified in Azure Security Technologies. And therefore, I believe we are in a good position for us to have a charge for Azure Application Gateway being one of the security technologies that is covered. At this juncture, I'd also like to turn off my video so that you can all concentrate on the slides. So at the core function of it, Azure Application Gateway, it's just a layer 7. When you look at the OSI layers, in layer 7, we deal with application layer. It's just a web traffic that load balance enables you to manage traffic to your web applications. Compare it to traditional load balancers or maybe other types of load balancers which normally dwells on layer 4, which is when you talk about layer 4 and these other load balancers, we're majorly talking about source IP and also source port, destination IP, destination port, and the protocol. They normally those 5 tuples. But now when you talk about Azure Application Gateway, the core function of it is just your web traffic load balancer. And then this brings the aspect of layer 7. It entails a number of the HTTP attributes. It does a lot of things because now this one deals with the traffic at the layer 7. And as you can see from the left side of the screen, the Azure Application Gateway, how it works, as you have said, is a load balancer, but now this balances your traffic at layer 7. It serves as a point, a point of contact for the client. So basing on your request will first hit this application gateway, and then this request, basing on the number of the configuration that we'll see in the subsequent slides, the request now gets distributed to the respective backend server or the backend target where your respective application is sitting. And Another good thing about the Azure Application Gateway, in as much as the core function of it is about in distributing or load balancing your traffic to the backend targets, it also integrates with the WAF, which is the Web Application Firewall. So this capability that it enables you now to protect your applications or your web applications from common vulnerabilities, and the major part of it is being the OWASP, the latest OWASP model, which stands for the Open Web Application Security Protocol. So there are various number of attacks that are already known that are normally grouped up into OWASPs that form the OWASP way, and a common attacks include something like the SQL injections and also the cross-site scripting. So when you deploy the application gateway, at the core function of it, you can use it to load balance traffic to your backend server, but also you have the capability of enabling WAF to it so that you can be able to protect now your applications that will be sitting on your backend servers from these web attacks, as you can see from this diagram here. So the diagram indicates an application gateway. We have site 2, site 1 there, and then we have only the valid request will be allowed to hit your target servers. However, traffic that are suspected or traffic that suspected malicious, they're now blocked here, and this one is because of the capability of the WAF that comes with the application gateway. What are the major concepts when you're dealing with the Azure Application Gateway? And I believe this one also forms part of the major challenge that most of the people face when getting started or when managing the application gateway. The issue is that it entails a lot of concepts or a lot of components that you have to configure for you to get it working. So in these slides, we are going to look at the critical aspects or the critical components of this application gateway, just to help us understand the various components that it makes up the application gateway before we can dive deeper. So at the beginning of which we have the front end IP address. The front end IP address can either be a public IP, can also be a private IP, or can be both. And this is the one that is associated to the listener. Just from the previous slide, as you saw, we had said that the application gateway acts as the first point of contact for your client requests. So the request will first hit the application gateway front-end IP, and we have said this IP can either be a public, can either be a private, or can be both. What really determines the nature of this IP is how your application is sitting. For example, if your application is meant to be public facing, something that has to be accessed by individuals publicly. So for that one, you'll have your application gateway having a public IP address. But if, for example, you are serving a line of business application, something that has to be accessed internally, but you want to front your application using an application gateway, in that case, it will be good for you to use a private IP, which it will be given from the subnet where you'll place your application gateway. There could be other cases whereby you want to use both. This is the case whereby, since the application gateway can serve various applications at the back end, some of the application may be public facing, some of the application may be line of business application that can be accessed internally, or maybe because of more security concerns, you want it to be accessible by internal network. So you can choose to have both, which it will be a combination of the public IP, private, and a private IP. The other thing that makes up an application gateway is the listener. And this listener, this one is the point or the logical entity that checks for the incoming connections request. So when you're configuring listeners, we'll see in the demo, there are various components that will configure. This include things like port and also the protocol. This is the one that checks for the incoming requests. As we have talked about web traffic, most of this traffic will be either an HTTP traffic or HTTPS traffic, but the application gateway supports for protocol, it will be that HTTP, HTTPS, we have also HTTP2 and the WebSocket. The WebSocket is enabled by default, and the HTTP2 designed for specific scenarios, but most commonly used protocols are either HTTP or HTTPS. So this listeners, basing on how you have configured it, it now checks if anything hits this point before it can translate back to the backend. Then we have a backend pool. So we are talking about having a backend targets. What are these targets? Our backend. So your backend pool can compose of various things. One, it can be a virtual machine. Suppose you have hosted your application in a virtual machine. So that one can form part of your backend pool. It can also be a virtual machine scale set. You have several virtual machines running in your scale set. They can also form part of your backend pool. It can also be an IP address or a fully qualified domain name. Suppose maybe you want to have a application gateway fronting your maybe a firewall before someone can hit to your application. So you can put a NIC, the network interface of the firewall there as an IP that will be form part of your backend. Can also have app services. Most of the scenarios, it is where we have a backend having app services. So you have hosted your application on app service, and then you want to front this application with an application gateway so that you can leverage that load balancing capability, or maybe you want to leverage that WAF capability that comes with an application gateway. So an app service can also be part of your backend pool. You have talked about having the front end, which could be your IP. You have talked about having a listener that will check on the incoming traffic. We have also talked about having the backend pool, which are your VMs or app services. Then the question becomes, how now are you linking them together? So to assist with that one, we have the backend settings. So the backend setting now, this defines how your application gateway communicates with the backend servers. So it is in the backend settings that also you define what points you will want the communication to happen on the backend server. This one will include also things like protocol, if you want to check on a specific port protocol, and also if you need to configure more things like maybe session draining, also session affinity, all of those capability will see it is under the backend settings. The backend setting, we have said that it is now the part that now determines how the communication will happen with the backend server. But now we'll now configure the rule. The rule now comes to tie our listener and our backend pool. So whatever server is in the backend pool, so tying them together, we configure a routing protocol. Then last of it, we have health probes. So health probes help us in monitoring our status of our backend pool. And we have to note that application gateway will not route traffic to a backend server that is is unhealthy. So in this case, you're advised to configure custom probes so that you can get the greater control or have more monitoring capability over your backend servers at the backend pool. From these core components of application gateway, you can tell that it is a bit confusing, or it is a lot of concept that you need to get to know how to get started with. And I believe this is the part whereby if you understand the various aspects or these various components together, it will make it easy now for you to get all the concept about the application gateway together, or it's like you are saving for you to bring those fabric together. You'll have to understand at the front of it, you have the front-end IP, you have the backend pools, and what connects them together we'll set rules. But don't worry, once we are on the practical aspect of it, I believe we'll get to understand it better. So how does this work? We have talked about all those components. So let's have a picture of it, a pictorial picture, to see how now from the first point that you're initiating a request, how it goes to the backend and how it comes back to you. So in this case, we have a user here. A user you are accessing, maybe suppose our application, we are hosting on maybe a virtual machine there. We are hosting there something like Azure Kenya User Group.com. That is our website that is sitting on either virtual machine or on app service. So you go to your browser, you enter there, Azure Kenya User Group.com. It will hit, as you said, application gateway now forms as a point of contact to our clients. So it will hit that point, and this point, it will be the front end of our application gateway. In this case, since we want our website to be accessed publicly, we configured our application gateway to have a public IP. So it hits that part of the public IP. And then we have a listener. So this listener, we are checking about a traffic, want maybe a secure traffic to come. So we are checking at port 443, and we are checking about, it is a 443 HTTPS. So we are checking that listener, we are configured to check on that particular request. So you hit azurekenya.ke, it hits that front-end IP of the Azure Application Gateway. Then we want now to translate, and you see on our virtual machine where you have hosted our Azure Kenya.com website, we had hosted it on a particular port. We had exposed that application on a particular port. Suppose maybe you have exposed that on port maybe 80. Suppose it's port 80. So you have exposed that on port 80. And to define those one, we define it using our backend setting. So on our backend setting, we are defining, we are looking at port 80 on our virtual machine. So, and basing on the health prop that we had configured, it looks like our virtual machine is up and the site is reachable, is working. Then it will go to the rule. Now the rule will connect our listener to our backend there. So there will be that communication, it will happen. It will then route that particular request to that particular site, and then the site will be able to respond and the communication will get back to you. In the midst of them, there's the HTTP header, some changes is happening, but that one is a communication that is now maintained by the application gateway and the backend server. You, as long as you have those rules right, it will be able to see. You can either be checking on a particular site. Suppose your virtual machine is hosting a number of sites and you want a particular site. Maybe you had configured that multi-site routing. It will be able to see using your domain name. It will be able to route it to a particular site. Maybe you had configured URL-based routing, whereby you had configured a certain path, so keywords on a certain path. It will be able also to see on that particular path. It will route you to a respective application. Or maybe in this case, you only have one server sitting on your backend pool, and then you had configured a basic rule. So by that one, it will just default that that traffic to that backend pool. So ideally, that is how the communication happens. But if you look at this one, we also have here the WAF capability, which is also enabled. You can enable this one to your application gateway. So when you enable this one, you have said this is when you want to protect now your application from common vulnerabilities and threats. And the major part of it being that Microsoft will now allow you to protect it from OWASP, those well-known web threats. Okay. And then, so basing on I know there are a number of the ways in which you can approach the configuration of application gateway, but to me, what looks easier and also what I can recommend also to you to start, it makes it very easy for you to get the flow, especially after you're configured, because once you are setting it up for the first time, you'll need to give those default listener, and then you'll also have to give backend. Your backend pool. You also have to have a default backend setting. But once you have configured that, you're able to come and edit them. But now later, for managing purposes, you are now deploying more applications, and you want also to front those applications with your Azure Application Gateway. To make it easier, the first thing that you can start with is now you configure the listener. As you said, the listener, this one is the logical entity that now will check for your request. Start by configuring the listener. Then after you have configured the listener, you then go to configure your health probe. The reason why I'm saying configure health probe first before you can configure your backend setting, it is because you will want your backend setting to use a custom health probe, because you have said when you use a custom health probe, we'll have a greater control over how we want to monitor our backend pool. So go first, configure your health probe. Your health probe will define what you want to check and protocol and also on the port. And then after you configure your health probe, now come and configure your backend setting. And then in this backend setting, it will utilize the health probe that you have configured earlier. Then after you have done that one, last you configure the rule. The rule you have said it's now come to bind this listener to your backend pool. And if you have those 4 processes in place, then you're ready to go with configuration of application gateway. Then, as you're almost over, before we can jump into demo, there's a number of things that I like to just to pinpoint, and this one it will make it easier, especially when you come to troubleshooting your application gateway, connectivity issues. One of it is NSG consideration. You'll find that most of the time I've seen people maybe they are placing an application gateway in a subnet that is not associated with an SG. That one can be a right way. The other point whereby security is key, and you want to lock access to this application gateway. Now you want to control traffic using your NSG. So if you're using the network security groups, if you in that subnet that contains your application gateway, some of the things that you need to check is on the inbound rule. Ensure that you have an inbound rule that will allow HTTP and HTTPS. So as you say, source can be based on your requirement. If you want people from a particular network to connect to, that way depending on whether your application gateway you want it to serve people, public people, or a private network. So you'll have to configure that source, and then on the destination it will be your public or and the private front-end IP of your application gateway. Then on the destination port, you also depending on the where you want your listener to look at, either it could be port 8 also, or port 8443, which is HTTPS, and then the protocol it will be TCP. For outbound rule, there's nothing specific that you'll need to keep in mind, but you'll also have to configure another rule in two inbound rules. This one depends on the version of the application gateway that you're using. If you're using version 1, outline here that you'll need to configure the incoming traffic on these ports. That one is 65.543 and to 65.553. You can configure that range. It will be an inbound rule. If you're using Azure Application Gateway version 2, the port that will need to allow it will be 65.200 and to 65.535. The reason why you're configuring these inbound ports, these one are required for your Azure infrastructure communication. They will need communication. Your application gateway will need also communication from Azure network, and therefore you need to allow these rules. If you don't have the rules, you may have challenges in terms of you getting to that application gateway. And then the other thing that I'd like to point out is whenever you have issues, maybe you have configured your application gateway and then you're seeing maybe you're not able to reach your site, anything first point that you may need to check or you may want to go as a first point of contact, it will be on the backend health. Ensure that your backend health are healthy, the settings are healthy, because as you have mentioned, you have said that application gateway it will not route traffic to unhealthy backend. So when you ensure that your backend is healthy, if it is unhealthy, there will always be there an error message that will throw. Try to look at that one, and then once you are resolving that one, you should be able to connect to your application gateway. Should be able to be up. And just a quick one, what we want to achieve with a short demo. So in this demo, we want to achieve a number of things. One, we want to demonstrate how we can use URL-based routing capability of the application gateway. Just have here do something quick that can help us to start with. So how these infrastructure sees that is that I have created a test VNet there, and then I've just deployed 2 virtual machines. In this case, I'm using virtual machines. And then there's one there, there's another there. So these virtual machines have enabled the IIS role. So to be able to the web hosting role on the VM, both here and here. So in these, I've created 2 custom sites. I've created one that is called azurekevideo.com and also azurekelearning.com. And the other one, I've created another site that is azurekeimages.com. And then here is where we have the application gateway that is sitting on a specific server. Something that a specific subnet, something that you may want to note is that the application gateway will only sit on a subnet that has no any resources. So it will sit on its own server, on its subnet. If you're not doing anything, maybe if you're not something like you don't want to have that, there's that point where when you'll see when you're creating application gateway, you can allow that to be able to scale out. So basing on the number that you are picturing on the instance count that you have in mind, you will need to maybe to be at least keen when you are selecting your subnet address. For me, I believe these are wasting addresses, IP addresses, but in a case maybe you may do a /28 or something so that you can at least make good use of the IPs. But this is what we have. We have application gateway sitting on its own subnet that is called application gateway subnet. Then we have another subnet there, subnet 001. Then we have two VMs there. The VMs have the web application role enabled. Here I've deployed just a dummy sites, one for videos, other for learning, and then here is for images. And then we want to see if this person, if you are coming here, we are hitting our application gateway, but I'm using a URL, this one. So we want to do that URL-based routing. If I'm using this specific URL, I should be able to get to this specific site. I should be able to rule that one. I should also be able to access sites that are maybe a multi-site. There's an server that is hosting a lot of application there. So I should be able to just access a specific application that's sitting on a server that is hosting a number of applications. Also, something that we also want to achieve is that also enabling the web application role, just to see, just for me to protect these applications that I've hosted in these two dummy servers here. The other thing that I was not able to capture in this, will not be able to capture on this demo, something that maybe some of you may be anticipating. It is on the SSL termination or TLS termination. So what this happens, in this case, I don't have any valid certificate that I could register my applications. And maybe in the subsequent session we'll have that, we'll cover that one, whereby we register now our application, and then we secure that domain with a certificate so that you can be able to do that SSL offloading that will happen at the point whereby your request is hitting application gateway. That is the first point whereby we'll have to check on the validity of this request by the application gateway unpacking your request, checking on those headers, HTTP or HTTPS headers, to see on the validity of it. And then if you want to achieve also end-to-end TLS or end-to-end SSL, this is whereby also your probe, you're using the communication now between your application gateway and the backend. Also, you have uploaded the root certificate on the application gateway, so it's able to check. So also be able to check on that one. In this case, you'll not be able to achieve that one because you're now going to access all these applications through an HTTPS and an HTTP. And maybe before we can quickly jump into the demo, is there any questions so far?
Hey, hello.
Hello, Philip.
Thank you, Albert. Just a question on the termination and server certificate. It's the certificate is configured at the application gateway level, right? Hello?
Hello, you can get me,
Hey,
Philip?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I wanted to respond on that one. So looking at the basic of it,
I think we lost you, Albert. Albert, are you there?
hello, what about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Yeah, I
back
can hear
now.
you now.
You can get me?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me remove these headphones. Maybe some issues there. Okay, you can get me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was saying, let's have a look on how you are configuring the certificates. First of all, suppose maybe you have hosted your application on app service. There you had configured your certificate at app service level, right? Where you are now binding your domain to this certificate. So the same certificate, because you want now the traffic to be checked against your domain, it is the same certificate that you will upload on the app gateway. So the certificate will upload the certificate on the app gateway for it to be able now to verify the traffic that will be coming to that specific domain. So yeah. So the aspect of the certificate binding, you've done it on the app service level of things. And then that certificate, be it where you have stored it, you can just upload it on the application gateway.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, is there any other question, or we jump into it, and then I believe more question will come when you get the practicality of it. Okay, so I'll bring another screen here. So I'll just walk through also, I'll walk through the process of creating, because I already created one before the session, because this one will take a long time for it to be configured. Okay, so this one is one that I've created for demo, but let us walk through the process of creating one. But I'll not deploy that one. We'll come and use this one that I've already just already deployed. Sorry. So the process, just you need prerequisites. You need to have access to an Azure subscription, as we know. You also need to have the right access for you to be able to do this one. You should be able to. This one is my subscription. I created a resource group. In this case, I call it Azure KE demo, and then you can give it a name. In this case, let's have a dummy name, like and say App Gateway, maybe demo kind of a thing, and then this one region. I believe by this time you already have your preferred data center in cloud. In this case, I'm using North Europe, but based on your requirements, you already have one in mind. So here you can configure. You see the V1 that's already duplicated, the standard this one was V1. So at the moment you can be able to configure V2. If you want to configure with firewall enabled, web application firewall enabled, you can pick on this one, but this one is something that you can enable later after the configuration. So you can just pick on the V2, and then this is where I was saying we don't need if you need aspect of auto scaling, you can give those parameters here, but in this case we're just doing a demo. We don't need to do the auto scaling. You can say we don't need that one, and then an instance count, you can just maintain it at 1. In terms of availability zones, also this one requires with your approach in deployment in cloud. If you're using a specific zone in that region, you should be able to select. In this case, I can select none because I just want it. If you select none, it will be placed in just either of the availability. Okay, select at least one. Okay, need to pick on one. Okay, this one depend on the zone. And then this one is not enabled by default, but this one just in some few cases where you just need, you can enable that HTTP too. But other protocols are allowed, which will use HTTP, HTTPS, and the WebSockets allowed by default. And then per moment, you can only attach one application, one IP, public IP and one private IP, but you can use the dual stack if you want to use both IP4 and IP6. In this case, you can just do that one. And then you'll ensure that you choose a VNet whereby your VNet that you have a subnet that has no anything deployed there. In my case, I've already deployed some, so it will. I already have, okay, this one is one that I deployed first, which had my application gateway, but I ensure that your VNet at least have a subnet that has nothing deployed, because application gateway will sit on its own subnet. So if you have a question, you can just unmute and ask as we proceed. I may not be able to see the chart, so just ask so that we can be able to discuss as we proceed. Then this is what we spoke about, having the front-end IP. If your application, you are aiming for it to be accessed publicly, you will go for a public IP. If you just want to use it internally, you can use a private IP. But if you want both of it to be accessed, you can use both of it. Let's see what error is throwing. Okay, they don't support only private IP. Okay, so in that case, it will be both. Okay, so but depending on that one, in this case, you can just choose public one. Then if you have an extra public IP, you can choose there. But if you don't have one, you can create. In this case, maybe if you want to create one specifically, you can have public IP app gateway demo. So you can create a public IP there, and then now. I don't want to create, but in that case, we'll create, because now this will be an orphan resource. I will not use this one because I've said I'm not going to deploy that one, and I don't want to have the orphan resources. But for you, you'll create that one so that I can pick. I need to create so that I can move. Okay, so let's do that one. Gateway, I think say demo. Okay, let's create that one. After that one has been created, let's look on our backend. In this case, you can just create your backend pool that has no any servers in it, and then you can add servers later. But it is a must for you to at least create. Okay, so let me just create, and then I'll just delete everything. You can call it backend. Then maybe suppose you're using something like, let's say Azure KE demo pool, and create something like that, and then we'll add the targets later. Okay, then you can add that one. And then next, this is where now we are talking about, you already have this front-end IP, and also you have your backend pool. Now you need to join them, and this is a place whereby it will be the first time you're creating it will be a bit of confusing, but once you've created it, you can go and edit those parameters, or next time when you want to add a new site, it will be much easier. So yeah, they want us to add a rule. So in this case, let's maintain our naming convention. You can have rule Azure KE demo. They need to give a priority. We can give any priority from 1 to around 65,000, something there. Can have it as 500. And then you need to create the listener. You remember we said that listener is that logical entity whereby it keeps checking for the request. So in this case, you have to have it as listener. And then you want to check maybe Azure KE. And now listener Azure KE. Let me have it demo. And then it will check on that public IP that we have created. That is where our listener now checks on. It will check on HTTP. Your case, if you are doing it, in most of cases, in as much as you are also configuring an HTTPS, but you'll have two listeners, HTTP and HTTPS, and then you'll add a redirection rule at the end of it, telling us that any request that comes through this traffic HTTP, redirect it to the HTTPS listener. We'll see that one from already configured application gateway. You'll be able to do that one. And then if your backend pool just have one server, your backend pool has just one target, you can just serve it as basic. But in this case, maybe you are doing a multi-site, your backend pool has a server, maybe then it's hosting a lot of site there. You can also use this page. You can also use this function here. So once you do that one, just let me make it as basic for demo process. These are the default pages that should appear whenever we have errors. That one is fine. So you can, or they need us to add a backend target. So we'll go there. So in this case, you'll need to create, you can add one backend targets. So you have a pool, let me add the pool, and then backend target, don't have one. Let's quickly create a backend setting there. So for backend setting, you can have something. This is the one that we say that now this one, it determines how your traffic hits the backend pool or the backend target. So you can have it as backend setting, as like a demo, something like that. So then you want this one to our application, we're exposing our application through maybe port 80. So let's have it as HTTP. And then most of these one you can keep it as default because we don't want to use things like cookie affinities, connection training. These are the things maybe if you want to have that persistent connection to one site, and then this one becomes complex as maybe your architecture grows or maybe the complexity of the way you're hosting your application. But for just a demo one, you can keep it that way, keep it simple. Then the request timeout, this is the amount of time that it will take for your backend to reply to, during health prop, to reply to those health prop requests before it can determine whether it is healthy or unhealthy. You can just keep it a minute. These are 60 seconds. And then you should be able to add that one. So once you add that one, then you go to tags, ensure that you use tag while doing your in your environment. You can have maybe application owner. Say this one is owned by the IT team, something of the sort, and then you can review and create. We will not deploy this one because it will take some 10 to 15 minutes for it to deploy, and we don't have that time. Let's quickly go to one that as I have already deployed. Go there. So this is the one that I've already deployed. You have that one. And then quickly running you through the things that we need to do. So as we deploy this one, it comes, you saw during that process, you must have a listener, you must have a backend setting. And then this is where you can create more backend pools if you need to create backend pools. And in your backend pool, just this process, you give the name, and then as it's mentioned earlier, you can define you're using an IP, are you using a virtual machine, are you using a virtual machine scale set, or are you using an app service? This is where you can define it more. That is it. So let's have a look at what you're going to deploy. Let's go to we have two backend pools here. One, it is called backend videos pool, and the other is called images. If you quickly have a look at my virtual machines here, so I already deployed two just before the session. We have this Azure KE demo VM, and also we have this one Hyper-V pod. So these are where I've deployed those dummy sites, and that one should form part of my backend pool, because there is where my targets are sitting. So those targets, you ensure that in this pool, at least you have one. That virtual machine you can see it is there. That should be fine. And then my next pool there, you can also see your pool, and then that is my VM there. Quickly going to these two VMs. I guess I already go there. Let's first of all bring this down. So I'm there. So this is the second. So these are the VM that we are looking at. It was a server, then I enabled that role, the Internet Information Service, which can be accessed through this way. And so in this, we can have a discussion later. We already had two sites here, just to show you the sites. In this one server, I'm having two sites are sitting here. We have the Azure KE sitting here, and also we are having the Azure LAN. This one, if you want to access this one, can be able to be browsed. So you should be able to see, and then is that HTML file that I edited on the root file, and added that one. Should be able to access that one, and also this one should be able to be accessed. So that one is okay. So while you're in this server, because this is a server that is hosting, you're able to access these two sites, the video page, and then you're able to access the site 3 page. But we are not able to access it through when you come. Maybe if you do it from a side, you should not be able to access. Then get these things out. And then also when I come to I should not be able to access. If I do something like doing Azure, I'll do an HTTP just to see HTTP. Then you do Azure KE, already is there. If I do a login, so it will time out, site not found. Or this one is hitting my application gateway. Something that in this case, for me to be able to hit this application gateway, I had to change my host files so that my DNS can point to this one, because this one is, I want to access it locally. But for you, I guess normally you're doing it on an app service. You will need to, when you're adding that custom domain to your application, you'll need to have your custom domain pointing to the public IP of your app gateway. If you come to app gateway on these front-end IPs, which you can get from this side here, you add, for a case, you configure the public IP. So ensure that when you're adding your CNAME, when your DNS service provider, ensure that that CNAME points to this public IP. My case, I had to edit the root file, and that one can quickly be confirmed. My host file, let me open Notepad as an administrator, do that one. So if you quickly open that path, you should be able to see already there. So edited some so that my DNS can point to the public IP of my, you can see here. I've added a couple of sites just before the session for us to be able to run through it quickly. I want to say whenever I'm pointing to this site, it will be an HTTP. It should result to this one, which is my public IP of my app gateway. And then I've also added for this one and this one. This one you can confirm that one if it's fine, but let's try to ping this one. At least it should ping from the public IP of your application gateway. Maybe it might be some of the troubleshooting tips that you may want to see. For example, you configured a new site, you're not able to reach that site. Ensure that that site, if you're using an application gateway, at least it is responding from the application gateway. As you can see, this one is responding to that one. If you're using an internal DNS, ensure that you've added a record to your DNS server that is pointing to the public IP or the private IP of the app gateway, depending on your requirements. So for us, we are sure that if I browse to this site, it will point me to the public IP of my app gateway, but I'm not able to reach the site. Why? Because I don't have roles in place. I don't have the backend setting. I don't have the listener and all those kind of things. So let's quickly we add that one. So for listener, I already have this one for the images. Let's add one there. So can add, we're adding an HTTP one. And now it's, as we say, listener. And then we do videos, and then it's a HTTP. So we're hitting our public. So for you to do that SSL termination or SSL offloading, you will select on HTTP, and you need to already you uploaded your, when you go to the certificate, you already uploaded your certificate that I was talking about earlier. So since if it has been already uploaded, you should be able to pick it from this side. On that point, you should be able to pick it and it will be able to do that SSL offloading. But in this case, you don't have any certificates in place. So let us do a quick one on HTTP. We are doing HTTP. I want this one to listen on port 80, but I want to give it, because I'm having a multi-site, I want to give it a specific domain that I want it to check. I want it to check because I'm doing for video and do an Azure videos, azurekevideos.com, azurekevideos.com. So once you have that one site, it's okay. You need to have that one, it's fine. So we said you add listener first, make it easier, do your health probe. So once you deploy this at the first time, you'll have the default health probe. But in this case, let's have our health probe there. So you can say we're doing health. Then this one is for the video. We can say Azure videos probe, something of the sort. And then I want this probe to monitor my port 80 because I've exposed that application on port 80. So can also give the name. I want this one to check on my host, which is azurekevideos.com. And then I want to check on the route. If you need to do a path-based routing, you can give a specific path, maybe that on images or videos for it to just check on that particular path. But we're doing this one on the interval. This is the time taken for it before to send another probe for it to check if your backend is healthy, and then this time taken for that request to expire, and then this is after how many intervals. So if it receives unhealthy, it will now try to probe it 3 times. If it continuously receives for those 3 successive time unhealthy status, then it will mark your backend as unhealthy and no traffic to be routed to unhealthy there. So want to use probe matching conditions, I normally advise to go with yes, because any request that comes within this range, 200 to 399, it will make it as a success, and then it will be marked as healthy. So in that case, don't want to test. Let me just add. Then we'll quickly add a backend pool that now will make use of this health probe. So quickly going to the backend settings, and then we'll add one, say backend settings, and then you're doing it for videos, and then this setting is taken on HTTP, but 80, that one is fine. We don't want to do those cookie affinity kind of things, but connection draining. So request timeout, this is the time taken for the your backend server to respond back to that request that will be sent from your by your health prop. So it will take for it to time out. Let's do a 1 minute. Take a 1 minute for it to wait for the request to come back from your backend. And then here you're using a custom probe. Here you say yes, and then choose your probe. In this case, I'm doing for videos. That should be fine. And then finally, you need now to tie your listener to the backend pool by using a rule. So you quickly configure a rule. So add a rule there using naming convention. You can say rule Azure KE videos. That should be fine. Let's give it a priority of maybe 200. And then the listener, what it is listening to this. And then on the back end, so since I'm fully doing for HTTP, so on the backend target, I'll choose my pool, where I have the pool, and then on the setting that I've just I've just created, which is this one. But if sometimes you may want to do a redirection. The redirection could be maybe you want every request that comes through HTTP to be converted to HTTPS so that your backend servers can receive trusted traffic. That is where you'll do the redirection. But in this case, I'm not doing any redirection. I'm not also doing any path-based rule. So I can quickly add that one. And once that one is added, we'll confirm on the health. Once the health is right, should be able to reach that one. Go on the backend health. It's something that you may want to be checking. His status is refreshed based on those intervals that we had configured when configuring the health probe. So we make it every 30 seconds to send the request, and then the request is out. You should be able to receive. So once you go back here, we're doing for videos. And then since I have the rule for do HTTP, and then you go to that part, Azure, it was Azure videos.com. You should be able to go through the application gateway, and there we go. So we're able to access our site using App Gateway. That one is fine. Quickly do that one. The same will apply if you want to do the other one for images. I see the one that I created, the default one, which I should be able to receive. When I change this path to images, I should be able to be routed to the right server. Then the last thing that we need, we want to assume if it's a multi-site, we're not able to reach. Why? Okay, because of the extension. Let's just reach that one. We should be able, and then if it was a fully site, should be able to open these images pages. Because our first server, we had 2 sites sitting on that one, we can quickly go through the same process, but the process will be the same. The only thing that we'll need just to update, you'll just update on the host name, ensuring that now the host name is pointing to the right host that you need to access. And it is as easy as that one. Just a recap of that one. Ensure that you have your listener in place. After configuring the listener, you can quickly configure the health probe. For configuring the health probe, go configure the backend settings so that you can utilize the health probe that you have already configured. And then another one, you now configure the rule that will tie. So something that I find useful, one is going on your backend settings or backend health, check on those health. And most of the case, if it's unhealthy, meaning that your application gateway is not able to reach your application because your probe is not able to get back to that backend setting that we define while you're configuring. So the thing is, try to have the picture of the traffic flow in the environment, especially for those who are doing, maybe they want to do, you are fronting your application gateway, you fronting maybe your firewall with an application gateway. In most of the cases, your backend pool will contain the NIC, or they'll contain the IP of your firewall. So when you go to the backend pool there, the target, for example, in this case, the target will be if you want to add a new here. So that is fine. You'll pick on the IP, and then this will be NIC of your firewall. But also ensure on the firewall you are doing that NAT translation, because that traffic will come with the source IP will be the app gateway's IP. In this case, if you're doing a public, it will be a public IP. If you're doing a private, it will be a private. So ensure that you're able to convert look at the source IP of the gateway, but don't look at the source IP of your users. So I see that's most of the challenges people are facing while configuring application gateway in front of your firewall. So ensure that you are able to do that NAT, translate the source IP of your application gateway now to the internal, so that it can be able to be accessed. And once you are doing that one, your application gateway should be able to reach to your application, and we should be able. The last thing that I want to quickly cover, it is on the web application. For this also enabled, but if it has not been enabled, if you come at this place, you'll get enabled WAF. So in this case, I've enabled. Quickly having a look at this one, we'll set another session whereby we'll now concentrate on the WAF capability. The WAF web application firewall it can be a standalone. You can just create a WAF policy, and then you can have one policy attached to many application gateway, but you cannot have an application gateway that has a number of the WAF. It will only be one WAF attached to that application gateway, but WAF can be attached to a lot of application gateway that we have in place. Also, WAF is a feature that you can also achieve while configuring maybe your front door. You can also have WAF there. So it's a standalone on its own. It's some of a feature. For this one, I created this one, but in prevention, it is in detection mode, not yet switched to prevention mode. While this one is in detection mode, it will just log any threats. And the good thing about this one now, it's using the information obtained from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence in terms of getting those malicious IP or malicious threats. So there are two parts of the rules. There is a managed rules. This one is done by the Microsoft, and then you can add custom rules. And when you add a custom rule, the custom rule will take precedence over the managed rules. But in this case, since I configured the latest one, it will take on the OAuth 3.2. But you can see there are a number of this one. If you need to be in change action, or what you want to see, there'll be a number of things. Maybe just a quick one. If you open, let's try to open that one. Initially we talked about the OAuth contain a lot of the common threads getting to the web applications. So you should be able to adjust this one so that it can fit to your environment. And you can also be able to alter this one, just trying to see how that one should be done. On the rule set, do you have any rule set here? Okay, let's quickly go on the overview. These are talking about the mode. Okay. That's something that I'll confirm for you, but I should be able to change if I want to swap back to maybe a previous version. Should be able to do that one. That should not be of a problem. Just not able to locate the that tab, but that one should be done. And then, as you have said, your custom rule will take precedence over the Microsoft managed rules, and that is it. Application Gateway in a nutshell. In case of any questions, I'll be glad to have a conversation about it. Let's see.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Albert, for that wonderful presentation in the demo session. Much appreciated on that. So from the audience, I don't know if you have any questions or clarification needed. Yes, Oliver. Oliver, I think I can't hear you. I don't know if your mic, it seems to be having an issue. I see you have unmute, but we can't hear you. Maybe you can also just type on the chat if you're having issues with your mic. Yes, Samson.
All right. First of all, thanks, Albert, for that great presentation. Two questions. One, how can we set up an alert to an action group to alert if maybe the backend goes unavailable or unhealthy? And then two, in terms of, you can elaborate in terms of how does application gateway handle like the application gateway itself, high availability, like how does it work?
Okay, right. Thank you for the question. So the first one is setting an alert rule. Whenever your backend becomes unhealthy, I believe that one should be a way out. A quick one that I'm thinking is, maybe let me quickly bring the other screen. We check on our activity logs. If we have any log there, that can be a fast way in which you can set a custom alert rule. But the other thing on that monitoring, the monitoring blade, we should be able to do just a quick one. Let's confirm something. Let's see if there's any alerts here. If there's any activity logged here. The other activity is on a platform-based activity. What if you go here? That is something that I need confirmed for you, but this one, there must be a way in which you can set monitoring of those backend targets. Let's see on the monitoring. Policy modifications in terms of let's dig more into that, and then I'll respond to you with the WhatsApp group. I believe there must be a way in which you can set that one. Just we should be able to see where that is being logged, or where we are getting that log of healthy or unhealthy state of pain. Should be able to set. And then regarding availability, what I can pick, well, we can, in terms of, first of all, I talk about availability in two ways. One, when the first way, the simple way, when you're selecting on the zone, suppose your client doing it on, you have your accessing zone 1, also zone 2, you can deploy 2 instances, whereby at that point you are saying instance, you can deploy that 2. One to be on the first zone, second on the other zone. But the thing that we need also to check on that one is it the same way like the virtual gateway happens, whereby in as much as you're deploying more than one instance, you are only able to manage one, and then the other one is managed by Azure, Microsoft. It's something that we'll need to check with you on how now you manage the two. If I've deployed 2 instances of it, do I have access to both of them, or will I have access to one, and the other one needs to be accessed through programmatical ways, maybe through PowerShell? That is something that I also need to confirm. I don't have a declarative answer to that. But availability can be obtained in those ways. You can deploy it by enabling it in various zones that you have, and also that aspect of the auto scaling. Also, that one serves the aspect of availability, in that if you're receiving a traffic, there's that aspect whereby an application gateway can serve up to 40 websites. But if you have more than 40 websites, you will need to scale up so that more traffic can be served. So in that case, if you have that, if you don't have that auto scaling in, I believe it should be able to scale and be able to serve the other request. I don't know if anyone from the audience who has come across where he needs to actively use that aspect of managing 2 virtual machines that will be deployed in various zones at once. If not, okay, that is something also that I need to confirm. Okay, I see this Major. Maybe please, can you assist us in that?
Okay, hi. Okay, was it the last question about deploying virtual machine in different zone, or the initial question for the other user?
This last question of high availability, deploying your application gateway, and then you're managing all the instances. Suppose you have 2 instances, do you get access to all of it, or you only access one and then the other one you access through programmatically way?
Okay, for me, I'm more of AWS, but what I know is that the application gateway is a managed service, so it's has high availability by default. So what you need to worry for is for what you deploy in the one instances to availability zone, but the application gateway has high availability by design in AWS. So I don't know about more Azure, but I hope it's also the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it's the same. Normally, you'll get the gateways, most of the gateways ranging from VPN gateways. The other way, you are assured about that high availability, but in most cases, if maybe a client wants an active environment where he needs to see this one is my active, and be able to manage all of it. So there's that aspect whereby there's that provision where also a client can have access to other instance that is being managed by the cloud provider. But thank you for that. I will also try to dig deep into that and get back to you some.
Albert, there's also a question from Oliver on chat.
Which one specifically? Maybe you can assist in getting the question.
Yeah, so from chat, Oliver is asking Azure LB, I believe Azure Load Balance versus the Azure Application Gateway, when to use one over the other, and can they be used simultaneously in an architecture?
So let's start with the one that we've covered today, Azure Application Gateway. As you have said, Azure Application Gateway, this one is a layer 7 load balancer. It load balance your web traffic at layer 7 of OS model. The other Azure load balancer, that one is at layer 4. It is working on the TCP, which majorly looks at only 5 tuples, which is the source IP, source port, destination IP, destination port, and the protocol. It does not have more information about your HTTP or HTTPS header. It just have that capability of layer 4. So that is the great difference. You can use an internal load balancer maybe to load balance traffic in your virtual machine scale set. But when you want to load balance your web traffic, so the key difference is when you're dealing with the web traffic, because we're introducing the aspect of HTTP header, now that is when you're using an application gateway. Then you can use both of it. Actually, there's a scenario whereby there's a client is fronting a firewall with an application gateway. This firewall now routes traffic to a load balancer. The reason why they are being load balancers is because I don't know if anyone has interacted with the service fabric. When you deploy a service fabric, for you to manage your application also, it will see that service fabric, it will deploy virtual machine scale sets with a load balancer ahead of it. And then this customer also wants to protect these applications that is being managed by a service fabric through an application gateway. So you'll see it was routing traffic to an application gateway. Traffic gets to a third-party firewall. In this case, it was a Palo, and then it gets NATed to an IP of a load balancer, and then the load balancer now NAT again to your internal application. So depending on the use case, you'll get they can seamlessly work together. They can you can usually work with them together, but also knowing that achieving different objectives while you're using them. It will, maybe just to point out also, there's also a clear difference when you're dealing with application gateway, traffic manager, and Azure front door. What a front door will do, it will just do what the application gateway does, but now this one is when you want to serve maybe you have your clients globally, you want to serve them. It is a global, either kind of a global service because it's able to route traffic to a lot of maybe distributed application around the globe. But for application gateway, it is advice you can use it one per region. If maybe you want to serve people, you already know that your people are in a specific region, your application gateway will do that one. But once you are talking about people from various parts of the continent, this is the thing like CDN comes in place, which can be easily integrated with an Azure front. That is when you're using it. Another case is maybe you want to distribute traffic to your on-prem workloads using maybe an internal DNS in terms of resolving that one, and you want to route traffic basing on the DNS resolution. As you have seen, you will not be able to do that one using an application gateway or a front door. So that is where the traffic manager now will come in. If you want to route traffic basing on the DNS, because the traffic manager will be able now to resolve this DNS up to a specific service that you want, maybe sitting on-prem or whichever place that will be. So that one provide a different use case. So on when to use a particular service, it normally tied to what use case are you trying to solve. Back to you, Kelvin.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the comprehensive responses on some of the questions that have been raised on there, Albert. So in the interest of time, we'll just be able to take those questions in the session today. But please feel free to continue with the discussion on WhatsApp channel. So if later on you realize there's a question that you have remembered, you can just shoot it in our WhatsApp group via the link that was earlier shared by Samson, whereby you can be able to pick up the conversations and the discussions on that. Same case as also following our LinkedIn channel and also our meetup group, so that you can stay updated on the next session that we will be having. So with that said, allow us to stop our session from there today. I hope it was quite an educative session and you got to learn a thing or two from the session today, and you can be able to start applying it in your day-to-day activities. So with that, we come to the end of the session today. Thank you so much for joining and being part of our Azure Kenya User Group community, and you're looking forward to more of these engagements. Thank you so much, and have a good night.